Hi guys, today we're going to delve a little further into skill acquisition. We're going to talk about motor programs. So in order for you to achieve success from today's lesson, you will need to be able to define in your own words what a motor program actually is. You would be able to identify subroutines within a given motor program and be able to apply all this information within the context of volleyball. So, what is a motor program? We must define it before we go on. So a motor program is an abstract representation of movement. Now that's important and a bit complex to start with anyway, but basically it's not a simple natural movement. What we're saying is that it's a complex movement that requires many smaller elements. So we spoke about fundamental motor skills in the previous lesson. This is a combination of a number of fundamental motor skills and various other technique requirements as well to give a motor program. So that's what that means. A motor program is an abstract representation or a complex combination, shall we say, of movement that centrally organizes, so centrally means using the brain, and controls the many degrees of freedom involved in performing an action. So many degrees of freedom as in, if I'm going to throw a ball, I can actually move my hand anywhere. There's lots of freedom there. It's not like my shoulder can only perform in one plane. It can perform around many planes. So there's lots of degrees of freedom there, okay? And then, of course, you've got the motion of my shoulder, the motion of my elbow, the motion of my wrist, of my fingers in a throwing action. Signals transmitted through efferent and afferent pathways. So that's just neural pathways going away from the brain and to the brain. Okay, allow the central nervous system to anticipate, plan or guide movement. So if we deconstruct that a bit further, that simply means that in terms of the neural pathways transmitting information away, that simply means, for example, I might see a ball coming towards me. If a ball's coming towards me, I'm gaining feedback. My brain is processing that information, and it's going to tell my limbs what to do with it. If I'm going to strike at that ball, maybe I'm going to spike the ball in volleyball, then my brain needs to assess how quickly the ball's coming and at what angle it's coming at, and how quickly I need to respond, and where my body needs to be in space to be able to make contact with that ball. It sends those messages to my arm, which may start movement. Once the movement starts, there's also another feedback process where my brain, my limbs may be in a certain space, and I might realize that that's actually not going to make contact, and my brain will process that and adjust and send other signals to move my arm in order to make the contact. So that's a motor program, complex series of movements that actually create one particularly complex skill, but it involves processing of the brain in feedback and feed-forward ways. So motor programs are broken down into subroutines. Okay, so we'll go through the subroutines in a bit, but that just means little sections. A skilled movement happens when subroutines are performed with correct timing. So the motor program, as we defined before, is the whole plan that specifies the timing and sequence of total movement. The instructions are held in your memory and it's sent to your muscles. So the more you practice it, the quicker those messages become and the more automatic your movement becomes. So examples of subroutines in motor programs. So for example, a tennis serve, very similar in action to a volleyball serve. The subroutines include things like the grip of the racket, the backward swing of the racket, the point of contact with the ball, the follow through of the racket, your stance, so your position of your feet, and how your legs move when you're coming into contact with the ball toss and the angle of the racket head. So this here is the motor program. Sounds pretty simple, tennis serve, but there are many, many subroutines that need to be performed correctly with the correct timing in the correct sequence to be able to have this motor program work efficiently. So that's motor programs in a nutshell. Make sure that you try and apply that now in the context of volleyball. Thanks, girls.